It's December 16, 2024. I'm Gloria Nussbaum, and I'm talking with Clete Yoder of Columbus, Ohio, via Zoom about his involvement with Mennonite Disaster Service. Clete, I'm delighted to have you join me, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of what you have to share with us. We like to begin at the beginning, so can you please tell me when and how you first learned about Mennonite Disaster Service?
I guess as a boy, my parents had friends that were involved with Mennonite Disaster Service, and this would have been back in the 60s, early 60s, when I was still living at home. And some very close friends, and I can't even remember their names, they were from Oklahoma, I believe. They were very involved, and those stories were always interesting. And so I felt that someday I would like to be involved with something like that.
And where was home at that point?
That would have been in Chester County, down below Morgantown, Pennsylvania.
So at some point, you went on what we would probably call your first service project. Tell me about that. What do you remember?
I retired in 2005, trying to find something to do, and a friend of mine invited me to go with him down to Mississippi, and we went down there for 2 weeks and helped the family restore their home. And then I came back, and because I had been in engineering management, I called Mennonite Disaster Service and told them about myself and said that I'd be interested in getting involved with MDS. And I had just been down in September in Mississippi, and therefore I'd be interested in getting involved. And so they asked me about myself, and immediately they decided that I'd make a project director. And so I think in February of 2006, I went through leadership training, and then I joined the team in Pass Christian in April of 2006. And that was the start of my journey with Mennonite Disaster Service.
So what was it about that first 2-week stint that made you think, well, maybe there's more to this, or I could be helpful, or talk a bit about that experience?
That was an MDS, but that was a time, it was September, a month after the hurricane. So there were houses everywhere. It was in really bad shape down there. And these people were in desperate need. They were reaching out and helping each other. It was a wonderful atmosphere to be in, where people were caring and helping, and it was catching, and it was a place that you wanted to be. So I came back with the determination that I'm going back down to help in any way that I could. And that's when I thought I might try it through MDS.
So what is the role of a project director? What kinds of things were involved with that? And we're going to make a good use of your skills.
Well, my skills have always been budgeting, scheduling, and keeping track of the scope of work for any project. I built power plants, anywhere from nuclear to coal-fired to oil-fired, whatever. So that was my career. And as a project director, we handled people, we handled materials, we worked with the community and the building department. So all of those things I had familiarity with. I understood it well, so I could step into a project director's position. Once I understood how they operate, then I could be a project director.
Did you know what length of time you would be down there when you became the project director?
I knew that you go for 4 weeks at a time.
And so is that what you did, or did you stay longer?
Oh, I stayed much longer. I stayed most of the spring and that summer. This is a slow season for MDS volunteers. Most of the people are working in their trades and in the fields and things. So I have always made myself available for in the summertime and fall when others were not available. So I'd be able to go down, even though it was not the best time to be in the South. I chose to pretty much be on call, let them call and tell me when they need me.
What was your living situation going to be at that point?
Down in Pass Christian, I think they put me in one of those RV trailers, and it was quite nice.
Talk a bit about some of the challenges. Now, this was kind of, I mean, you were using the skills that you had, but this was a whole new organization. Did you have like construction skills that maybe would have come in a bit handy as well? Or talk a bit about.
By the time I got down there, they were building new homes there in Pass Christian. And I didn't know too much about the construction skills. And so as a project director, I needed to know how to build these homes if I'm going to be a leader on a project like this. So when I came home, then I would work with Habitat for Humanity 2 days a week. And I learned my construction skills from foundation all the way up through the house and drywall and all of that. So I worked Tuesdays and Thursdays every week learning construction skills. And so as I learned those, and of course I was a civil structural engineer, I knew structures, I knew how loads flow through a structure, and I really enjoyed working with my hands on doing construction. So yes, it wasn't long after that, Mennonite Disaster Service had me start working with the architects on getting our sketches to drawings of the homes. When I first started working down there, we just had 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper showing what the house looks like and the layout, and we built from that. So I started working with the architects, and I was the liaison person between MDS and the architects to get drawings and specifications and all of that. I understood all that. I know how to read drawings. I know how to make them and everything. And so that was helpful for MDS for me to be a part of that.
Were these professional architects that were local, or talk a bit about who the architects that you were working with were?
They were there in Lancaster County area.
In Pennsylvania?
Yes, they were professional architects. MDS hired them to produce these drawings. And so then I worked with them to develop the different plans so that we had plans to go to the building department to get approval for building and that sort of thing. And then for our crew leaders and construction foremen for them to use so that we get consistency on our building.
Was part of your responsibility to, quote unquote, shepherd those plans through? And then how many did you end up with in terms of, did people have choices, the clients?
Yeah, they did.
About that whole process.
That was one of the good things, was that they could take the plans and go to a client and let them help select what layout they wanted. We started out with 12 plans, which was building houses on piers. So they were elevated at different heights. And I helped develop that with a architect there in Pass Christian on what that would look like. And then I took that and got with the architect up in Lancaster and let them help put together a more acceptable plan, a readable plan.
How much interaction did you have with the actual MDS volunteers who would come for what, a week at a time, or?
Yeah, our weekly volunteers come in on Sunday afternoon and then leave on Friday evening or Saturday morning. But after I learned my construction skills through Habitat and with the different people in MDS, in the summertime when our long-term leaderships were short, often I would be the project director and the construction foreman. And that's what I liked most. I liked being able to take the group that came in on a Sunday afternoon, sit down with them, and then interview them as a group and you know what they do. And then I would take that information and then I'd decide on what groups are going to work in and make up my team so that Monday morning they'd come and they'd see on the board where their name was, and then assign to them. They would know who they're working with, who the crew leader was, and always tried to find somebody skillful, a short-term volunteer that was skillful in the tasks that they were going to perform, and then they could help the non-experienced volunteers do the work. I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, buying materials and getting materials on site and have it there in time for them and directing on how things to be built.
I'm guessing that there were times when there were volunteers who didn't necessarily come with a lot of construction skills or whatever. Talk a bit about what that was like.
I was over in Saipan. I think it was the summer of 2017. And again, in the summertime, when we didn't have a lot of volunteers in MDS, so we teamed up with, I think it was the Methodist group, and they were providing us volunteers, and they would schedule their time through Lidditz. I think at that time it was through Akron. So I'd go and pick them up at the airport when our volunteers came in, and they'd come out this side door. Well, here comes this elderly couple, and she's walking with a cane, and I go, oh my goodness. And then a few minutes after that, another lady come out in a wheelchair. I'm thinking, how am I going to use these people? Well, I've always felt that if God sends them, he's got something for them to do. I started out by having them clean some of the glass from the windows that were taken from the old house so they could be used for the new house. We were building a new house at that time, and had them pulling some nails out of wood, and that didn't. So then I got to thinking, they need to visit the neighborhood. So I asked them to just go around and visit neighbors. And then there's this one house that we had just finished. The previous project director had just finished it, and the mother was expected to come home, and she was living on another island while her damaged house was being repaired. Well, anyway, she dies about this time, and so these ladies went over and were able to minister to her and help her plan the funeral. And I got the request, can we use one of the MDS pickups to pick up the body at the airport to bring out to the house? And I go, wow, this is a first. They got a funeral director to do that. We didn't transfer any bodies in the pickup. But anyway, they really helped out. And I think that group even raised some money to help pay for the funeral. But they were there for 2 weeks. Saipan, that was a short-term assignment, it was 2 weeks. And they were busy, and they did a wonderful thing. Who knows what God had planned, but that's the sort of thing that I rely on is the Lord's in control, and if he sends somebody, he has something for them to do.
And all you have to do is figure out what that might be.
That's right.
Was it also your responsibility to just oversee the work itself, make sure things are being done correctly? And were there ever some things that maybe had to be redone, or you were like, wow, that's amazing? Or
Oh, absolutely. Our volunteers are the most precious thing that MDS has. So I always want to be encouraging and not discouraging and give leadership. And you get spread kind of thin when maybe you're working 4 different places. And you're trying to watch it, and your crew leaders are young people that are there for a month, and they get people out to the job site, but they don't really have all the skills. So sometimes things, they don't get built quite right, and then on weekends I'll go out and change them myself.
there's always a way to figure it out.
There is.
So you were in Mississippi, down south, you were in Saipan. Where else have you been in your years of working with MDS?
Eagle, Alaska, Lusk, Wyoming, Minot, North Dakota, up there in Calgary area. What was the name of that place? Different times in Mississippi and Louisiana, American Samoa, just quite a few places.
So how did you normally get to the places that you needed to get to? Now, at this point, you're based in Ohio. Is that where you've been for how long?
Yes, I've been in Ohio since '94.
So that was your actual home base for your life. So did you drive to most of these places? Well, obviously there were some airplanes involved, I assume, as well, or?
Yeah, often airplanes. Like I went to Saipan at 3 different assignments over there. And so those were long rides.
Where exactly is that?
It's over just east of the Philippines in the Pacific, down from Japan.
Well, that's a place you probably would not have gotten to otherwise. Is that a safe
Exactly.
assumption?
Exactly.
And maybe with some others as well. Talk just a bit about the geography.
Well, one interesting thing was when I was up in Eagle, Alaska, there was a guy up there by the name of Andy something. Anyway, he was helping us with materials, and he was a resident there. And he originally was a pilot on the Yukon River there for the cruise people. So he was very active in the community, and he had a little place down the Yukon that got flooded out. And he had dog teams, and he wasn't married, but he always had a girlfriend that lived in. So I met this gal and didn't think anything of it. And after that trip, I got back, and then I was invited to go down to American Samoa. And now American Samoa is below the equator. I get in there to start setting up camp so that we could bring volunteers in and start working down there. So I'm working with the different building agencies. And when I was in the environmental office, wanting to understand what requirements were needed when working with buildings, I was talking with this one young lady, and somehow or other, I told her I just got back from assignment in Eagle, Alaska. She says, "You did?" And here she was, one of Andy's girlfriends that had all those sled dogs. So it was a small world. It was a long ways away. She had lived with him up there for a while.
The other thing that occurs to me is each location is different in terms of what the disaster was, what the needs are. Talk just a bit about that whole situation.
Well, like in Eagle, Alaska, we worked with the Samaritan Purse group, and we shared tools. So there was a lot of things, and we worked together on the different houses. Over in American Samoa, we teamed up with the Southern group, and FEMA provided all the tools. And so they worked one end of the island, we worked the other, and we worked together on sharing the tools. And then over in Saipan, the same thing. I mean, some places you work very closely with FEMA and like real close friends. And then other places, it's not so much that way. No job is ever the same. Yeah, it's different people. It's the people you work with of those groups that make a difference.
Say more about that, because I was going to say the word I keep hearing over and over in my interviews is relationships.
It is relationships. Like up in Eagle, Alaska, the FEMA guy would come and sit around the campfire with us, and we would have a great time together. And we worked together. I got over to Saipan, and you didn't have that relationship. It was a different office, and you couldn't get close to them. And down in American Samoa, you could get closer to them. Down in Mississippi, you heard a lot about them, but I didn't really work with them so much. In reality, they all work the best they can to do the job that needs to be done to help put people back into their homes. And everybody does it a little differently. And so relationships are working together with the community, with volunteers, building departments, and all of those. That's where my experience has been, is working with those different groups to come in and get a job done. So we can use our volunteers to do the work. But you have to have a plan, you have to have money, you have to have materials, you have to have all of that. And somebody needs to pull that all together so that when the volunteers come in, they have meaningful work.
And it sounds like flexibility might be kind of important too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're never quite sure when you're working with volunteers who or what you might be getting.
And I had the Heston group for several years.
Tell me what that is.
The Heston students.
From Heston College in Kansas.
Kansas, yes. So They would come for 2 months after their program, and MDS partnered with them and helping with scholarships and things. And then they would come and work on a job site for 2 months. And so often I would be a project director for them. And they were fun. They were always pulling pranks on each other. And there's where you had to be flexible. You had to be stern, but you had to allow them to be who they were. And yeah.
So you've worked with from the young all the way through the old in your times.
I do. And I have a saying, the old men and the young women are the best workers. The young women are trying to show the young guys that they can do it. And the old men are trying to show us that they can still do it. And they will do anything you ask them to do. And they do it well.
Are you still active with MDS, or what's the story at this point?
I am. I've been active here in Ohio as chairman of the East Ohio. I no longer that. It's been 6 years or so that I haven't been. And then I was involved as the area coordinator here in the Western Ohio unit. And I just finished that, and they have new people there. And so we were doing projects out in Dayton, and I helped coordinate those and lead those. And then I was a project coordinator down in East Kentucky when they had the floods there. And so I was down there for several months coordinating and helping get project directors situated, and staff came in, whatever it took to keep everybody going. And then I was about 8 months over in Puerto Rico as a project coordinator over there. We had 3 different locations we were working at, and I would help keep the project directors and incoming staff coordinated, and tools and materials and that sort of thing.
And I would guess that depending on what the disaster is to which you are responding, lodging, finding a place for people to stay while they're working. Were you involved with that as well, or?
Not so much. In East Kentucky, I helped get set up at Bethel Camp because I knew them. And anyway, I went and talked with them, and they allowed us to set up there. But majority of the time, the regional director will go in and make sure that they have a long-term recovery committee set up. So our regional director of that area will work with the long-term recovery committee, and then they will look for resources to set up a camp. And once they have that set up, then they'll call and start putting a staff together to run the project. And that's where I may get a call and say, hey, would you come in and start this work there?
So there are obviously different kinds of disasters: hurricanes, floods, fires, tornadoes. Is there one of those that's more challenging than another? Talk a little just about the kinds of disasters, and in terms of your role, is there one that's more interesting, or?
Yeah, they are all different. I don't know that I like floods. Floods come in and leave a lot of mold because they don't get them aired out. And so you're dealing with wet, moldy conditions. And maybe some of these homes were in poor shape before the flood ever reached them, and they needed maintenance and improvement before the flood. And now everything's wet and moldy, and yeah, those probably my least favorite, but they really need help. I think one of my most favorite is building bridges. And being a structural engineer, I worked on the first one and helped get that one started, and done several since. But bridges, I understand those very well as a civil engineer. And I'd worked with Johann Zimmerman out of Virginia.
I've heard some about that bridge project, so you've been involved with that as well.
Yeah, we did 2 bridges down in eastern Kentucky. We built 2 bridges in 1 week. They were about a mile apart, and I got everything coordinated, the materials and the equipment and everything. And then there was 20 people from Lancaster came down there, and they put her together.
And bridges are their own kind of unique construction too. Did you help design any of that, or?
No, that had to be done by a professional engineer. I am a professional engineer, but I don't have my license anymore for Virginia and places like that. And that's where Johann Zimmerman, Harrisonburg, Virginia, he has all those, and there's a lot of work with the environmental people on permits and things like that. And so I like to stay out of that.
As we're finishing up here, you have obviously given much time and talent and energy to Mennonite Disaster Service. What have you received from MDS?
What have I received? A lot of satisfaction, seeing happy faces of volunteers making a difference and seeing their excitement, homeowners receiving a home, something more than they ever expected. I like doing projects. I like using people to get a project done. And this is one place that I can take volunteers and coordinate the project and complete it. Yeah.
And the satisfaction, I would guess, of knowing that it's a job well done, because MDS has a reputation and they work hard at making what they do the best it can be.
Yeah. And what they do well is there's other volunteer organizations that say, yeah, the reason Mennonite Disaster Service does so well is because they have all skilled people. And that is not true. We have a few skilled people, and if you put one of those skilled people with some other unskilled volunteers, they make them all look skilled. And so I think MDS does a good job of using what little skills we might bring to the job that week and using them to use all the unskilled to look skilled and do professional work. We had techniques also and training to help people to learn. So it's not just throwing a bunch of people at a job. A lot of these other organizations will have a multitude of volunteers and they go in and do a job, but they're not doing the technical stuff that we're doing. You can only supervise 5, 6 people, each leader. And so your project director needs a good 5 crew leaders with good skill leading, and then have 5 or 6 people assigned each one in different projects. And you can accomplish a lot and do a good job. And that's what MDS does.
And a piece of that is organizational.
It is. And we have a system. You change out your staff every month. And how do you keep a project going seamlessly with a project director coming in and one going out, an office manager coming in and an office manager going out? We try to have a little overlap, but many times I didn't. But we do the same thing. We're all taught the same way. We know how to pick up after another. So that's what MDS does good. They're good at that.
Well, you shared some wonderful information and stories. And Clete, just thank you so, so much. First of all, for taking the time to do this interview. But secondly, for all of your many, many years and hours of work with MDS. Thank you so very much.
Well, it was good talking with you, Gloria. And I'm okay if you don't use 1 minute of this conversation. It was just good talking with you.
You have given us much very interesting information. Trust me, it's been a joy.
And MDS is totally aware of everything that I've said. It's nothing new. We all do the same thing. There's a lot of good leadership skills and